even though we've demanded that the changes that occur. Teachers have seen the impact of No Child Left Behind. And under the current ESSA framework, 80% of how a school is going to be measured is still going to be based on the test. That does not change. This top-down, compliance-driven curriculum, top-down compliance testing is still the current idea that's going to occur. I have been asked by members of this board to give Dr. Kishimoto a chance. And to be honest, I am going to. I want to have a conversation with her. I think that's where things go, well in a system for education, where the department and the teachers can have a conversation of what's best for our students. But if the decision is going to be made by the previous administration of what's going to go forward, why bother? Decisions have already been made. Why go through all these changes if it's the same thing that's been done in the past? I was fascinated by what came up here for the bright spots for Nanakuli. When you asked them the things that they wanted, first thing they were worried about traffic because Nanakuli has a problem recruiting and retaining teachers, and that's one of their top priorities. It talked about, every single one of them mentioned the importance of air conditioning. And then it was fascinating to see this. Emma, he talked about, and Hugh, you asked about how health was so important for their schools. And having a nurse at their school was so important. And that they at that school, and I'm so proud of them, were deciding to fire data compliance people and not use those positions so they could hire healthcare workers and look at the inputs. That is what we should be doing. They were so proud of their students and their Hawaiian culture program, their hula that we're teaching. The arts in that community are so important. We have so much flexibility under ESSA to do great changes. And the governor embraced this change. I saw and I went, and hundreds of teachers testified on the blueprint. The blueprint is not what's in here with the accountability plan. Teachers' voice is being ignored in this. And I do not want it to be that the first year that Dr. Kishimoto is put into this system, that the teachers in the classroom level see no difference in changes. That's not the beginning introduction that you want. So I'm asking, just temporarily, pause on this, let Dr. Kishimoto come in so we can have this conversation. And maybe then she's able to put her vision in for our schools and we can be part of that conversation. Thank you. Mahalo.
Ka'anui Walk, Kamehameha Schools.
Aloha.
E kaluna ho'omalu Mizumoto, ka hopeluna ho'omalu Dilima, e nā lālau ka papa ho'o nā oa, aloha mai kako. Mahalo for this opportunity to share our recommendations and comments, supportive comments. My name is Ka'ano Iwak, and I currently serve as a senior policy analyst for our community education division at Kamehameha Schools. And we are in support of the transformation requested and proposed for school accountability through SharePoint. We're really excited about the proposed multi-level schools reporting plan, and we think it accommodates the various different school sizes and communities, and especially for charter schools and kaipuni schools as well that may have multi-level grade spans. So we're excited about that. We also are excited about the option for locally selected student success measures to be included in the reporting. Our recommendation is that the board and the department consider to adopt a safe harbor for kaipuni and Hawaiian immersion charter schools as well. As the kaipuni assessment for educational outcomes continues to progress, as we all know, there's been great strides, a lot of positive movement, but there needs to be more time, and the work is not completed yet. And so parents and communities may feel hostilities and have it felt at schools perhaps, where families opt not to assess their children in the language that's not the language of instruction. So that's our recommendation, to adopt some kind of safe harbor as the Kaiapuni assessments move forward and all that great work moves forward as well. I'd like to leave with Olelo no Eo, Ohe Hana Nui Ke Aluia, which means no task is too large when we all work together. Mahalo nui for your time. Aloha.
Mahalo.
Chair, no further testimony at this time.
Okay, thanks, Gina. There's no more public testimony. We'll move on to the action items on the agenda. First, we have action on the Student Achievement Committee's recommendation concerning the Department of Education's multi-year school calendar. Now I'd like to invite Committee Chairperson Margaret Cox to present the committee's recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. The Student Achievement Committee recommends approval of the multi-year calendars for 2019-20 and 2020-21.
Okay. Any discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Next, we have action on the Every Student Succeeds Act impacts on school accountability. And I would like to call on Tammy Chun, Assistant Superintendent of the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance, to provide presentation on this agenda item.
Good evening. I'll be joined by Deputy Superintendent Keith Hayashi.
Good evening, Chair Mizumoto, Vice Chair Dilima, members of the board. Assistant Superintendent Chun and I are here to share about the new accountability system and how it connects to carrying out the Board of Education, Department of Education strategic plan. As you've heard testimony tonight, it's very important that we move forward and approve the plan, our recommendation. We've been going out to complex areas and talking to principals, and we've been sharing that as we see the Hawaii's Blueprint for Public Education as the overarching aspirational document of how with community input, with input from teachers and school level leaders, how we see the governor's team putting things together and education moving over the next 10 years. And what we want for our students with public education, that's very clear. We also see that how the board and the department strategic plan provides that incremental gains in terms of 3 years, how we're moving towards achieving the Hawaii Blueprint for Public Education and how we're going to get there. So the accountability system is very important in connecting and providing information to schools so that we know how we're doing and moving in that direction. We've also been sharing with schools that as we see the ESSA document, how we would leverage then, how important that is to be able to leverage federal monies, Title I, II, III, IV, and 9, to be able to support our initiatives and support learning for our students, especially those students in the 5% of the most neediest schools. So the blueprint as the aspirational long-term document, the strategic plan, in terms our strategic plan in terms of our plan incrementally to move public education forward, how we then leverage federal funds through ESSA, and then how, as a two-sided coin, looking at, and we've heard from our school leaders, that minimal federal oversight, and we would prefer to have our strategic plan be the document that is, the goals that is moving our schools forward. So that's kind of how we've been sharing how we see the different components connecting in moving public education forward. So Assistant Superintendent Chan will go more into the ESSA school accountability plan.
So just to put it all in context again, the school accountability is really a way for us to provide reports about data that's important. We have organized this proposal around the strategic plan. We also have to meet federal requirements. Many of those details will come forward in the ESSA plan, even though we're asking for your approval and accountability today, which provides some of the building blocks, but is not the full details of the plan. And some of the testimony received today, written and oral, refer to some of the details will actually be discussed in the ESSA plan. So I think we might have heard in the testimony from various people today that there's been a lot of opportunity for stakeholders to provide input. We have worked on developing this proposal for over a year now, and multiple opportunities for all kinds of stakeholders to participate. Given the feedback we got from Student Achievement Committee in April, we also took this out for public comment, for an additional public comment period, and we'll be reporting on that today. So the main things I want to point out, so I'll say that the memo itself details the components of the recommendation that we're asking you to approve today. The main things I want to point out in terms of themes. So first is that we're really focusing on state and school progress on strategic plan, student success objectives. So we've already approved the indicators on the strategic plan, and this is really just carrying them forward and operationalizing them for the purpose of school accountability. The state strategic plan student success indicators will provide common statewide measures for our schools. Additionally, you heard some of the testifiers say today that there will be an opportunity for locally selected student success measures. One of the things we know is that at the state level, there's only so many things that we currently measure and that we want to measure, and sometimes those are really insufficient to describe the full work that schools are doing. And so we are providing an opportunity, which we've never had before for our schools, to be able to offer their own indicators to fill in the rest of the picture about how their students are performing. I think the best example is when we talk about well-rounded education. We know that our statewide tests for language arts, mathematics, and science are important pieces of information, but really don't fully describe what a well-rounded education looks like. So sometimes people say, well, you have to test everything if you want all of it to be signaled as important. My office does testing. I'm really not interested in developing, more tests in art and PE and social studies and all the subjects. I don't think that's the right way to measure whether or not our students receive a well-rounded education or if they're well-rounded. We're going to provide the opportunity here for schools to be able to identify measures that are in alignment with their academic and financial plans to fill in. This might be other information about student performance in other subjects. It might also be interdisciplinary work, project-based work, where the students are putting forward work that are being assessed at the school level. So this is a lot of when we hear about authentic assessment or classroom-based assessment, this is an opportunity for that. I think the easiest example sometimes is senior project is an opportunity for our high schools to for students to demonstrate well-rounded education. Second, we are using this particular accountability recommendation. It really focuses on empowering our various educators and community stakeholders with the information to take action for student learning. We'll be providing annual state and school level reports and then online reports with more detailed data for the subgroups, as well as other opportunity measures about the school context. This is different than No Child Left Behind and previous versions of Strive High, which rated and ranked and classified our schools. So you might be familiar with the old system where schools are identified as continuous improvement, recognition, priority, and such. This proposal takes that away. And I think you heard one of the complex area superintendents say that that made it difficult sometimes to get beyond the label to have the real conversations that they needed to have. So that, based on the feedback that we got, we are not recommending continuation of that. We're recommending discontinuation of that system and instead really making the information available in a user-friendly way. This was not unanimous, just so everybody knows, because I think some people do really value having that label or that classification that makes it easier to say something about a school's performance but we thought this was the right direction that we needed to take to move conversations forward to improve student learning. We just went over the third one, and so the fourth one is for federal accountability purposes, we do need to identify schools with the most struggling students, and we really want to do that. So what we did was really take the federal requirements and try to mold them to our purpose. And so I think previously there was a lot of talk under No Child Left Behind about failing schools. That is not what we're talking about under the new Strive High. We are talking about how do we identify schools that have the most struggling students or struggling student subgroups and provide supports and then make sure those supports are appropriate to the needs of the school and the community. And then to be very clear that we do expect schools serve our students. And there are many reasons that schools perform at the levels that they do, but we want to make sure that schools are improving and things are getting better for our students. And so you'll see a lot more detail about that when the ESSA plan comes forward in full. As part of your packet, we provided some samples of what these reports might look like, the annual reports. These are just really illustrations to tell you what we have in mind. It is not a final draft at this point. Upon board approval, we will dig into finalizing this document and make sure we get a lot of user feedback in doing so. Wanted to just point out that we have organized the strategic plan indicators as well as a few additional indicators that are part of our federal required accountability under each of the different strategic plan objectives for student success. And then you heard, I think it was Ava's Nanbu, principal of one of the Central District schools in Mililani Complex schools, who said that she liked the way that this was differentiated by grade span. And again, examples of locally selected measures of student success that would allow schools to fill in the picture of what's important for their school. Some of the testimony pointed out different kinds of measures that might be appropriate for a locally selected measure, and I've included some of them here. And then finally, I wanted to share with you the public comment. You can see that this is a little bit more filled in than the slide that was in the board materials, because we have finalized the analysis of the the public feedback that came in on the last couple of days. So one of the testifiers had mentioned that he didn't think we took it all into account. We analyzed a majority of it, and then we've just filled in the last part of it in the last couple of days here. I would say that I tried to summarize what I thought were the main points of the feedback that we received, and it was more than just the online survey. We did an online survey with 224 responses, and 54% of those are teachers, by the way. We also did a number of other meetings with various different groups of stakeholders: teachers, principals, charter schools, HSTA, complex area support staff, and such. I would say that the feedback that we received in the public comment period was helpful in terms of us thinking through more of the explanation and providing some examples, but it was largely representative of the feedback that we had received throughout the year in planning for this. So in a lot of cases, there's choices that needed to be made, but those I think had been largely considered previously. I think you heard a couple of principals say, well, I had advocated for a few things that didn't make it into the end, but we had taken a lot of different things into consideration. So I did want to mention one final thing, which is there's still the details of the federal accountability that needs to be addressed, and that is majority of that, which includes the weights, which a number of people talked about today, are specifically being addressed in the ESSA plan. So today we're just asking you to approve the indicators, the reporting formats, the N size, which is the size of the student groups for the different subgroups that would be reported, for example. So this is not the end of our conversation on school accountability. It's just what gets us going to get the reporting for next school year. underway. So with that said, we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Keith or Tabby? Board Member Cox?
I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding of the ESSA, and we consistently get things about testing. This testing that we are having, is that something that the feds are saying under ESSA that we have to do?
Under ESSA, where every state is required to administer tests for English language arts and mathematics and science of its standards, and the board has adopted common core state standards in language arts and math, and then the Hawaiian language arts standards. Also in science, we just adopted next generation science standards, but are transitioning to those. So our tests have to measure our students' progress on those standards towards college and career readiness. There's various requirements for the testing, which include the grade levels that need to be tested for English language arts and math. Those are grades 3 to 8, and one's in high school. And for science, one's in elementary, one's in middle, one's in high. There is an expectation that every student be tested, and the federal purpose is that every student should get and their family should get a report of their progress towards meeting the state standards. So every student needs to be tested. There is a 95% requirement for test participation that applies to the state. So if we do not meet the 95% test participation, then our Title I grant becomes at risk.
So the reason I asked that, because I want to make it very clear that we don't survive very well without the federal dollars. So testing is going to be a part of what we have to do no matter what in order to get our money. Yes. And I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear to everyone, that some of those things we don't have the leeway to not do. The part that's good about this is that you're allowing for the schools to come up with extra ways of, besides testing, to show that our students are having improvement. So thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair DeLima?
I know there's no motion yet on the floor, but I'll be supporting the adoption of the school accountability indicators for today, with the understanding that we'll still be working on the ESSA plan revisions. I think we need to continue working with ESSA plan revisions, and the timetable for submission of the ESSA plan would permit the new superintendent to be engaged and work with the board and others to work on a final product that I think we all can be supportive. I do want to comment on a couple of things though in terms of the public testimony today. On April 4th, the board deferred to the full board the accountability and ESSA plan, because there was a federal requirement of a 30-day public input period. The 30-day public input period ended on May 18th. The quickest time that we could take action is today, May 23rd. So there was no intentional delaying. This is the quickest that we could actually adopt the accountability provisions has in terms of the timetable. Number two is I am concerned that as we roll out to the principals, and I really appreciate the fact that the principals are here. Basically, they're saying the strategic plan is important. They value the plan. They value the need to plan for their students' needs. But what really I want to emphasize is that the board, when it adopted the strategic plan, adopted an amendment that stated it is the highest priority that schools address the needs of struggling students. And when you view the accountability standards in that context, what we're really talking about is the reality that the principals and the teachers in the particular school really have to give voice to the fact that they themselves are going to have to determine how best to help the students who are struggling in their particular schools. None of the accountability measures that are before us specifically provides a solution to the problem of how do you help the struggling students. It is multifaceted, it is complex, it is difficult. Now, I say that because the concept of testing is, do we use testing as a measure of determining where people stand? Or is it a diagnostic tool to identify students who are struggling? And I don't think we've made the full transition where it is purely viewed as diagnostic. And I think that's where we want to go. We want it to be, and the board took the position that testing, ESSA requires standardized testing, but that the board adopted the minimum testing requirements and did not want schools to adopt a culture of testing. So yes, you're going to have testing, but the question is it going to be diagnostic, or is it going to be viewed as a badge of honor or a badge of dishonor? And I think that's what I think we are talking about in terms of authentic assessments, viewing alternative measures, figuring out how best we can address the improvement of students' performance in the particular schools. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think the culture is changing, the discussion is changing, and just adopting the accountability standards as it exists today doesn't mean that we're not continuing on that movement of transition to the point where we're viewing testing as a diagnostic tool and not as something that is the end result of everything. So it's a process, and I think we're moving in the right direction, and you know, I'm hopeful. So I'll be supporting this action tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Min.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank the leadership that came today, because it's not often that board members really hear from the administrators. So I really want to thank you, especially with all the time and effort that I know you folks have on your table. But at the same time, I will be supporting this, and the reason why is, before I left for my vacation, I visited 3 schools in one day. And I went up to my central district, and I visited Heremano, Lelehoa, and Waihoa Middle. Heremano is a blue ribbon school. It's in a very, very at-risk area. And at every school that I went, I saw success because of one thing: the strong, committed leadership in those schools. And I talked to these principals, and I walked with them, and they showed me around. And I know how busy they are working with teachers. But when I hear principals and administrators come and say that they can work with this plan, let us use this, let us use it to move our education system where I believe we all want to move, so that we can help the kids, we can find out where are the root causes of problems in your schools. And I trust the leadership. And I'm looking at this plan as an avenue to allow our leadership to now begin to move and be empowered and take our schools into the areas that they need. I'm very much aware that every school has their own issues, and you cannot use, like you said, specific indicators for everyone. But I'm going to support this because I'm hearing from the ground, I'm hearing from the leadership, and I'm also going to approve this based on the fact that the superintendent will be allowed to review this plan and give input and use her discretion where necessary, because it would be foolish for us not to. And at the same time, again, I'm with Mr. Dilema in that I don't look at evaluations as a sickness evaluation. I look at evaluations or data in terms of how is our system doing. If my classroom scores were poor, that's an indicator not so much of the students, but that my system in my classroom and me as a facilitator, I gotta come out and start asking them what's going on. So I applaud this, and I thank you for coming, and I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Board Member Voss?
Tammy, thanks for your presentation. I thought it was very well done. I had a question, though, about the last thing you said, something to the effect of, we're just beginning the conversation, and the conversation will continue, which I think is what Mr. Rosenberg is asking about as well. So how would you envision the conversation as to the accountability measures continuing? And if, with the new superintendent's input, as Mr. Min just said, it's decided that these need to be tweaked, is it envisioned that the accountability measures will be revised for the 2018-19 school year or not?
The accountability measures for Strive High, so the strategic, start with the strategic plan ones, those are based on the strategic plan. And that's what's proposed here, is to just carry forward what's already in the strategic plan. So to the extent the indicators would be, the board chooses to revise the indicators, then that would be changed, and I would expect that to be for the subsequent year. At this point, you give us the go today, we're going to start getting ready to make these reports available as early as possible, in, which would be probably mid-September of next year. The earlier they are, the more useful they are to everybody, so that we'll get started right away on that. In terms of the ESSA conversation, we're continuing to have meetings to discuss the details of ESSA, where there's been developments since we presented the draft to the board and to the public. We have followed up on some of the initial testimony, the public comment that was received. I think you heard some people talk about safe harbor for our Hawaiian immersion schools. We just had a conversation about that today to try to make sure we're considering the different things that are being raised. So what I expect here from accountability for ESSA purposes is that we're going to be rolling those, the comments, analysis of those comments and conversations to follow up on those comments into the next version of the next draft of the ESSA plan. Our intention is to come to the board on June 6th to present a summary of the comments received from the public comment period and to signal any significant changes in direction that would move in a substantial way from what the draft said. And some of that is underway because of the response to the public comment, but some of it we just have had more time to develop more parts of the plan, and we want to share that with you. And really, accountability is just a way to provide the information. What's really important is what happens once everybody has it. So I think that's part of the ongoing dialogue.
Colonel Santa Ana?
Hey, thanks, Chair. Appreciate it. And Brian, thank you very much. That was a very good way to bring everyone back into focus on what they're trying to do here. So thanks very much. Your presentation is really spot on. And again, I have to come from a standpoint of when I had a job in Afghanistan. Hey, how's the war in Afghanistan going? Wow. Trying to put an assessment on that is very difficult, but you had to start. And that's what this is. This is a very, very legitimate and credible start to tell how you're functioning towards the plan as you've laid it out in those objectives. I think with the testing, I mean, that's kind of, I don't want to call it a constraint, but you do have to have it to get the necessary funding. So we had to make those accommodations as well. So those are kind of the givens that you have to work towards. But when you're putting together those reports, trying to put all that into a context is going to be really, really essential as you draft those quick reports. And I think we talked about this before, those assessment reports that can't be too verbose and can't overstate what's going on, but it can also tell you if in fact the testing that's going on is too much. Are the schools putting too much emphasis on the testing because they're stuck in that no child left behind mentality, as opposed to looking at it as a diagnostic to say, hey, this is how well the environment is doing, and it's evident in the way that the kids are performing in these tests. Not that we're the best school ever based on tests, but the contextual report that you put together has to analyze all that. So I wish you all the best in that, but I think the board can help you in that regard to make sense of those reports, and then you can produce them and put them out there publicly so people can really understand. And this is not going to get not going to happen overnight too. So I think this whole idea that this is the first iteration is a very, very good thing. So thank you very much, though. This helps me a lot to try to understand this as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Bergen?
Thank you. Tammy, I just want to commend you and your team again, because I've watched this process for many, many months, and I know how much time and energy your team has put into going out and collecting the information and meeting with the various communities. And I think this is a perfect example of what happens when you take the time to do that type of work, because the overwhelming support that you have received from the principals in this room and the CASs is to your credit for all of that work. And I just want to tell you that this is a wonderful example of what collaboration can do. And they have admitted that, you know, there's some things that they wanted, but still that's part of the process. You put in what you think is going to work for the majority, and they have accepted that, and you really deserve some credit for that. Thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments for Tammy or Keith? Okay. May I entertain a motion? Move for adoption. Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion's been carried. Thank you very much. Next, we have action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee's recommendation concerning recommendations of the Committee on Weights 10 regarding the weighted student formula fund allocation for 2017-2018 and the 2018-2019 school years. I would like to invite Committee Chairperson Chun to present the committee's recommendations.
Mr. Chair, your committee met earlier today and received a presentation from Principal Mitchell Otani, who chaired the COW10 committee, which was actually comprised primarily of principals from throughout the state of Hawaii. They had a credible and defensible proposal that the committee elected to recommend to this board. So this is with regard to the weighted student formula fund allocation for the 17-18 and 18-19 school years.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion has been approved. Thank you. Next, we have action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee's recommendation concerning the designation of the Kalihi to Ala Moana School Impact Fee District. I would again like to invite Committee Chairperson Chun to present the committee's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your committee met earlier today on the subject of the Kalihi to Ala Moana School Impact Fee District and determined that it would be appropriate to recommend to this board that the Kalihi to Ala Moana district be designated as a school impact fee district. For purposes of clarification for the non-finance committee board members, the process is bifurcated, so all we are doing tonight is designating the district, and there will be follow-up work on the part of the department for establishment of appropriate fees.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have action on the nomination of individuals to serve as members of the State Public Charter School Commission. And pursuant to the board's process, the vice chairperson and I will recommend nominees for appointment. And when discussing the recommendations at this meeting, Vice Chair, please be sure to use only the applicant ID numbers provided to you in your meeting packets and not the names of the candidates. After the board makes its nominations, the names of the nominees will be placed on the meeting agenda for our June 6, 2017 general business meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the nomination of applicant ID number 1701, 1702, 1703, 1705, and 1706 as having met the criteria for serving on the commission.
Okay. Thank you. Call for any discussion, sorry. Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Finally, we have action on the appointment of members to committees of the board. And our newest member, board member Nolan Kawano, is not currently on any committees, but is interested in serving as a committee member on the Finance and Infrastructure, Human Resources, and Audit Committees. Therefore, I propose that Board Member Corn will be appointed to the Board's Finance and Infrastructure Committee, Human Resources Committee, and Audit Committee.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the approval of the minutes, and in your meeting packets are the minutes of the April 26, 2017 General Business Meeting, the April 26, 2017 Emergency General Business and Executive Session Meetings, and the May 2nd, 2017 General Business and Executive Session Meetings. So please take a moment to review them.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the minutes of the general business and executive sessions for those dates as you have identified.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes have been approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to the reports of board committees, board members, and superintendent. I'd like to call on Committee Chairperson Grant Shun to provide the Finance and Infrastructure Committee report on the meeting that was held earlier today. I apologize for taking this out of the order of the agenda, but I want to make sure we took the action items so that Mr. Boss can vote.
No problem, Chair. In addition to the two action items that we just went through, the Committee on Weights action as well as the Kalihi to Ala Moana School Impact Fee District action, your committee also received updates concerning the department's biennium budget request for fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19. Basically, the conference committee's decisions concerning the budget. Your committee will be further receiving presentation later in the summer concerning implementation of the budget based upon the decisions that have been made at the legislature. Another update that we received pertained to comparison to budgets for schools, food service, student transportation, utilities, Impact Aid receipts, capital improvement program, and air conditioning. And your committee was pleased to learn that 1,063 classrooms will be air conditioned by June 30th, so they're on track.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Committee Chairperson Chun? Okay, thank you very much. I would now like to call on Keith Hayashi to provide the superintendent's report regarding an update to the 2017 legislative session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most bills passed first reading and have been enrolled to the governor. Our priority bills, which include school licensure, market licensing program, and disaster relief, have not been signed yet. We have completed our comment and review on these, and it has been, whatever information that was requested has been sent over.
Okay, any questions for our interim deputy superintendent? Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it for our agenda, and at this time, there's no other agendized business, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion is carried.